It's the Cincy Jungle Week 13 post-game show from the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, part of the Cincy Jungle podcast channel. I am Anthony Cosenza coming at you live a little bit after the fallout from the Bengals' most recent loss, an ugly 19-7 loss at the hands of the Miami Dolphins. And I mean ugly in a lot of different ways. We will talk about that. There is a lot to talk about this week. Yeah, there's the stats or lack thereof for the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, there are a number of different issues that you can point to, and all of it, comes down to whether you're in defense of Zach Taylor or you're not in defense of Zach Taylor at this point. And we'll kind of go through a lot of that. I'm already seeing a lot of comments about some feelings from fans talking about Zach Taylor, but the Bengals lose in week 13 at the hands of Miami in South Beach, 19-7. There was a turning point in this game that everybody could readily point to. And this is where you maybe want to defend Zach Taylor a little bit. If you're the guys out there with the guys and gals out there with the pitchforks and torches, there was a pivotal moment where the Bengals were going to take control of this game. It was 7-3, or at least, take a nice lead going into halftime sort of thing. It was 7-3 late in the second quarter. The Bengals were moving the ball a little bit, got stymied, and were set up on a third down. We're getting Tyler Boyd failed to get the reception. It was a bad pass by Brandon Allen that sailed over his head. You were thinking that the Bengals were going to come out and go for the field goal, take a 10-3 lead to get into halftime and go from there. Well, what transpired from there was an inexplicable series of events in terms of the officiating, which kind of continued throughout the rest of the day. And so what happened was that the Bengals got a personal foul penalty from Tyler Boyd after both guys were kind of taking swings at each other at their helmets. So they're going to get flagged there. Tyler Boyd gets ejected. Xavier Howard gets ejected. Both guys get ejected, yet somehow Tyler Boyd is the only one who gets penalized 15 yards. Well, guess what happens? A manageable kick becomes a 53-yard kick, and we know what happens with Randy Bullock. With anything beyond 45 or 50 yards, it's a real mixed bag, and he missed it. So then that sets the Miami Dolphins up with great field position. They go down and score a field goal, a 6-point swing there, and after that, the Dolphins never looked back. The third quarter really, if you listen to Zach Taylor's press conference at the end there, the third quarter really told the tale as to where this game went and why the score ended up the way it did, because the Bengals did absolutely nothing in the third quarter. And the Dolphins kind of took charge from there, had a couple of nice drives, and that was that. This was a winnable game, though, and again, you're going to see this probably week after week. The shoulda, woulda, couldas. I say this, I feel like I say it every single time. Joe Burrow's in that game, and you play that game today, I feel like the last three games that Joe Burrow should or would have been available, those are all wins, and you're staring at a 5-6-1 record or something of the like at this point. That Washington game was very winnable, and it was very close until Joe Burrow left that game. The Bengals almost beat the Giants at home without Joe Burrow and a number of different players. And this week, the Dolphins covered the spread, 12 points, but it seemed a lot closer than that. The rest of the story has to continue to go to officiating. There were calls after calls after calls that went against the Cincinnati Bengals that were inexplicable. Mike Thomas got a personal foul penalty on one punt coverage situation where he tackled and forced a fumble, and somehow that was deemed a personal foul. And so then there was that situation. It was a little questionable. And then, you had another one that Mike Thomas did. That was an egregious fair catch interference. He hit him early, so that one deserved to be called. But then you had the scrum. You had the Miami Dolphins and their head coach come out on from the sidelines onto the field. Guys were taking swings. And I think if you follow Willie Anderson on Twitter, I think he noted it was one of the Bengals trainers that took a hit in the head or the face by Devontae Parker of the Dolphins. And it just was out of control. So the officiating, if you want to skewer Zach Taylor for today and what you saw today, that's fine, and we'll talk more about that. But the officiating today was absolutely inexcusable. There were instances after instances after instances where the officiating crew was an absolute disaster. And I don't like to be the guy that comes up with excuses in the form of poor officiating as to why this team lost this game. That's not why this team lost this game. It was a reason, but it was not the reason why the Bengals lost this game. But there was just circumstance after circumstance where the officiating crew let down, especially the Bengals, but really fans that were watching this game. And then it just got ugly and ugly and ugly. So, look, I'm going to share some things, one of which is a clip of Zach Taylor. I'm going to start there. Okay. There's a clip of him from Bengals.com on his post-game press conference. I'm going to share that, just a snippet of it with you real quick. Just a portion I thought was kind of interesting. I'm going to share another tweet from one of our good friends of the show that we're going to talk about some Zach Taylor, and then we're going to go through some stats, but there is a lot to digest here, and not a lot of it is palatable at this point. It's a borderline unwatchable brand of football that is being put out there by the Cincinnati Bengals. And, the officiating didn't help anything today. The Bengals, to their credit, I guess, they're kind of putting up a fight, but they can't find ways to win. They can't find ways to win close games, and they're not capitalizing on opportunities that are there. It's kind of the same old song and dance. Same old song and dance. So let me share this with you. This is on, and we're going to start here before we get to the stats and all that stuff. This is from Bengals.com. It is the Zach Taylor press conference after. It's about 30. You can see about 37 seconds in. Dave Lapham's had just asked him a question about if he thought the referees had cost them the game, or, how they felt. Zach Taylor kind of took the high road and just said, I'm going to skip to the next question there. And then he started talking about some other stuff that I kind of found both eye-opening, questionable, but, again, it speaks to his confidence level in his team. So we're gonna play this for you real quick.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, how do you prevent, it's a tough situation. It turned into something other than football. I'm sure the league will not be happy about what it turned into. What did you tell your football team after the game?
I'm proud of the effort they gave, and they were playing hard, and had some calls go against them, that we'll have to look at, to be quite frank. But, I thought our guys were playing hard and got put in a tough spot there.
Coach, only 30 yards of total offense in the second half. What was happening there that caused you guys to struggle so much offensively?
First down efficiency right off the gate. Two first down runs that put us in second 11, and then I think we were in first and 10, second 11, third and 11. The first two drives of that half, and that's where they captured the momentum. They went down and scored a touchdown, and they kicked a field goal, and to go up, what would have been 16-7 at that point, and we had two straight 3 and outs there, and that's unacceptable on our end.
So as I mentioned in this episode, or really, there's kind of in two camps a little bit of, and I think most at this point are kind of, you got to move on from Zach Taylor, but there are some points of defense, and really in these statements that he made there, you can kind of say, okay, that makes sense, but it also totally doesn't. So when this team is making plays like the second punt coverage tackle by Mike Thomas, where it was an egregious error, and what happens when there's a lack of accountability, when there's a lack of wins, and maybe even a lack of respect of the coaching staff, you start getting reckless play from players. And I think while Mike Thomas, I like that first one, and I didn't agree with the call on the first punt coverage tackle that he had that forced the fumble. Unfortunately, that second one seemed like a reckless play. Now, that may be a reach by me by saying, because it's a reckless play, automatically points to the coaching staff. But I mean, I think you kind of get my point a little bit there. There are players end up making kind of reckless plays because they don't really fear repercussions, or they're not coached properly, or maybe a combination of a number of factors. So, I mean, you could sit there and point directly to that. And the fact that Zach Taylor says, I think our guys fought hard today and, played well and all of that, you put up 7 points, you're not winning games. And there were some embarrassing moments, not just by your football team, but also by the Miami Dolphins as well, that were on display this week. So I take a little bit of an issue with that comment that Zach Taylor said. But at the same time, this is a depleted roster because of injury, because of COVID, because of all kinds of things. And in a sense, he is kind of right that this team doesn't. There was a little bit more, I guess, of a display of quit. The team quit maybe today just because of just the score disparity, et cetera, and some of the issues with the bench clearing fight and all of that. But the last 2 weeks without Joe Burrow, this team's, and Brandon Allen, a guy who does not have much NFL experience, this team is putting up at least a fight. They lost by 2 points last week, and this was a winnable game today until this wacky series of events and officiating and all kinds of other issues started to kind of snowball on them. And so it's kind of this round and round we go, right? And this is what makes this decision difficult, likely for the Bengals with Zach Taylor, where you kind of chase your tail. You go, okay, well, first offseason he got here late. He didn't get a chance to assemble the staff he kind of wanted, and he kind of ran with it. We gave him a pass there. And then this offseason he had the COVID. You've got all these injuries. Yeah, but he's won 14-1 in close games. Yeah, he's won 4 games in almost 2 seasons, right? So you keep going round and round with this. And at some point, you're going to need to make a decision that makes a statement to your football team. Either, we're sticking behind this guy and you better rally around him and the coaching staff that he assembles, or you need to make a statement and say, well, this is not the direction that this team needs to go. And some of what we saw on display today was unacceptable. And I want to make it clear also that, the fact that Brian Flores came out on the field and was kind of goading, I don't know who it was, Zach Taylor, his players. He kind of just basically was kind of saying, let's throw down, it seemed, based on the body language and whatnot. And, so it wasn't a great moment for the Miami Dolphins. There's a lot of ugliness in this game today. I see John Hall here. There is no defense for Zach Taylor. I get it. Tom Voland on Facebook, 423-1, no excuses. I get it. Don't be a company man. Trash Zach for being trash, from Jack Ryan, company man. I don't know if you guys know, I'm not employed by the Cincinnati Bengals, so I'm not being a company man. I call it like I kind of see it, and there are embedded excuses for Zach Taylor and his record, lack of winning, all of that. It's a matter of how much you buy into those excuses. And really, as each loss piles up and each embarrassing performance piles up, those excuses become more and more hollow. And you heard a reporter, I don't know who it was, after Dave Lapham asked the question there, 40 yards of total offense or 30 yards of total offense in the second half. And at one point, get this, the Bengals had less yards in the game in the second half, less second half yards on offense than players ejected. So that's pretty inexcusable. And I can talk about all of those excuses that I brought up. I mean, this is your offensive genius. And Tim McGee said it well last week on to Lindsey Patterson, and she related on Twitter. You got to learn to win with what you have. And at this point, Zach has to find a way to create positive vibes and positive momentum going into next year, even with so many guys not playing well, so many guys hurt, so many coaches and players on the COVID list, et cetera. And it just, when you're putting up 7 points a week, we are, this is what I have the real big problem with, ladies and gentlemen, is I have a really big problem with the fact that we seem to be in the exact same place at almost the exact same time of year as we were last year. You're on a backup quarterback, a little different scenario. Your starter last year was benched And this year he's hurt, but you're on a backup quarterback. Your roster's depleted. Now it just kept getting worse and worse today. Tyler Boyd gets ejected on that weak call. Jonah Williams takes a knee injury. We don't know exactly how severe that is, and it just keeps snowballing on this team. And at some point, you gotta figure out if the best way to stop that snowball from keeping its momentum mowing over all kinds of any positivity with this team, if that means to get rid of all of these coaches, some of these coaches. At a minimum, I don't think this coaching staff can stay intact next year. If Zach's still the head guy, okay, I guess. But there needs to be some changes. You can't keep the status quo at this point. And it's a difficult to say. I mean, again, the defense today, Tua had, we'll talk about this, Tua had kind of a big statistical day. But at the same time, the defense was okay on third downs. And, I mean, only let up 19 points on the road. So it's this thing where you go, well, but. It's not an easy decision, but what was on display today was difficult to watch in a number of different facets. I thought this was an interesting tweet here from our good friend Joe Goodberry. I will put this up here, talking about these injuries. Injuries are bad luck, but they also happen when you have bad players around your good players. Does Burrow get hurt if you're not starting the worst left guard in football that also allowed 9 pressures in that single game? Does Jonah get hurt if you're not starting a practice squad quarterback and bad right guard, right tackle? So it's an interesting point, and one that I think a lot of us have thought about. If you look at what happened with Jonah, I'm not going to play that clip because we don't need to replay injuries and stuff on the show. But if you look at what happened with Jonah, I mean, there was just kind of a blown assignment on the right side of the line. Kyle Van Noy circles back around, and, as Jonah is holding his block and kind of moving back a little bit, and the entire play goes through what it went through, someone rolls up on Jonah Williams that really probably shouldn't have been there because of poor play on the other side of the offensive line. We know that Joe Burrow's injury was because of a poor offensive line. And yet they still keep trotting out a lot of the same guys, a lot of the same things. And it's not really working. Mark Young said, did it look like an ACL? Hard to know. It looked pretty ugly, and he was carted off. Obviously, we will know more as the week progresses. It definitely did not look as ugly to me as the Joe Burrow one, but it was only kind of one body falling into Jonah Williams and not 3 like there was with Joe Burrow. But that doesn't make it necessarily any less or any more severe. It looked bad. He was carted off the field and didn't return. So that's where we're at. Seeing a lot of hashtag fire Zach Taylor, and you have merits to your argument there. You have merits to your argument. By the way, Abe McGee brings this one up. The O-line let another QB get killed. Brandon Allen took a big hit and had to leave the game. Ryan Finley came in, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. I'm going to go over some stats. So, I mean, it's the offensive line continues to have some issues. The Miami Dolphins had the most sacks. I believe it was 6. They had the most sacks they have had in a single game this year against the Cincinnati Bengals. And you can't win football games that way. And Zach Taylor, going back to what the clip I played you there, Zach Taylor said, we keep putting ourselves in poor positions. Well, it's because you've put together a poor offensive line. And yes, the injuries. You don't have Joe Mixon. Tyler Boyd exits the game early. You don't have your starting quarterback. And you're trying to make do across the board, right? And so, again, it's kind of that myriad of factors. You've put out a subpar group, or you've put together a subpar group at offensive line, but you've also experienced a lot of injuries to big-name players as well. And then that continues because of bad luck / other bad players potentially causing scenarios wherein players continue to get hurt, like Jonah Williams today. Yeah, this was a good one from James. Good James Miracle here. The fact that they waited till 3:20 left in the fourth quarter to play Suafilo to replace Michael Jordan, who was abused again, says everything about Taylor and the offensive line coach. That is a great point. Yeah, it's look it's no secret that they like Michael Jordan. It's no secret, and unfortunately, and we've known he's a project player. We have known that. Unfortunately, the project just is not moving forward. And I personally had high hopes for Michael Jordan. I thought he was going to be a nice player. He was one of the youngest players on the roster last year, if not the youngest. And so you kind of felt like, yeah, he needs to develop more. He needs to find his groove a bit. But again, the Bengals they pick up these kind of swing guys. It's like, yeah, he played center, he played guard. You need to start finding the guy, and a guy that fits a specific position and not do the musical chairs, not do the round peg and square hole type of thing. You need to find the guy and play them there. And so hopefully, if the season continues to regress or progress, however you want to look at it, the way that it is, the Bengals will have high picks yet again in every round, and hopefully they will use many of them on some offensive linemen that are highly talented, that will be upgrades at a number of different spots. There are a couple of spots at least that could use some upgrades today. By the way, Bobby Hart, who had a steady couple of games before being hurt, had a decent week last week, had some problems today as well, once again. So there's nobody really immune to criticism, especially when it comes to the offensive line at this point. Especially when it comes to the offensive line. Sock says Michael Jordan may actually be good someday with the right offensive line coach. Who knows? It's a good point. Again, if you're going to, you cannot sell this to the fan base. If you're the Cincinnati Bengals, you cannot sell Zach Taylor returning with a fully intact coaching staff in 21. You just can't. And if you're going to move on from Zach Taylor, then a lot of those guys or some of them need to go as well. But you cannot move forward in 21 with things being status quo and just saying, hey, we just need to be a little more lucky on the injury front. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. That's not good enough. I'm Anthony Cosenza with CincyJungle.com. Happy to have you joining us. We've got a lot of live listeners. We are now streaming on Twitter, on the Orange and Black Insider Twitter account. So if you want to join us on Twitter, please do. Otherwise, join us on the Cincy Jungle Facebook page, which many of you are, or our Orange and Black Insider YouTube channel. It's right under somewhere over here. There's a little button. You can click that to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can get all of our shows. You can get Chalk Talk film reviews by Matt Minnick. And, join us for the Gansett pregame show, our postgame show, the Monday News Jump, all kinds of different stuff. Or if you're more of an audiophile and you would rather listen to the audio downloadable, hey, listen to them all. Watch the video, listen to it with the audio, whatever you want to do. But we're on all the major streamers, so get the show how you can. We appreciate the support. I know a lot of us are there's a lot of people that are angry right now, a lot of Bengals fans that are angry based on everything that's going on and how this season has spiraled out of control, especially with no Joe Burrow in here. But, we're all, I think, whether we don't see eye to eye on certain things, I think we all want to see this team play much better football and put a much better product than what was seen today. I tell you what, folks, I don't know how old or how old some of you are, how long you've been Bengals fans, how much Bengals football you have watched. Today was very reminiscent of like the Jay Schrader days, 94, 95, like the days with Paul Justin, Akili Smith. This was not a fun brand of football to watch on a number of different fronts. Not a fun brand of football to watch on a number of different fronts. I'm not going to belabor the stats too much, but I think it bears going through at least some of these so you can kind of see where we are at. If you look here and you add in the net, the yardage, by the way, it was 6 sacks. I said that earlier, but yes, 6 sacks. 5 of Brandon Allen, 1 on Ryan Finley. If you add in the yardage lost from those 6 sacks, the Bengals passed for 156 total yards today. And you look at Brandon Allen, 11 of 19, 153 yards, 8.1. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. At this point, it's just really about, is Brandon Allen a capable enough guy to be an emergency backup quarterback once Joe Burrow returns for the future? Is he that guy? And right now, it's kind of just a mixed bag. The touchdown he threw was all Tyler Boyd. It was a short pass that Tyler Boyd took, all the way to the house, and that's where it is. Tua had close to 300 yards today, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions. I'll change to the Dolphins page in just a second here. But Brandon Allen, 11 of 19, 153. Ryan Finley, 6 of 7 for 40 yards, and then the interception. The only pass he didn't complete was actually a completion to another team, in one of those trademark Finley throw it into a crowd, gets batted up, and becomes an interception. Tyler Boyd threw a pass. Unfortunately, it was kind of a cool play, well designed, but they had a free blitzer and it kind of blew up the entire play. Would have been a fun play if it ended up working the way it was designed there. So Tyler Boyd 0 for 1, and then Gio, just another very pedestrian day, 12 carries, 30 yards, not a lot of running room. There were some plays early on where it was kind of stretch plays and outside zone plays where he found a little bit of running room. But as you heard Zach Taylor say at in the press conference, I mean, they tried to run on first down and it was very predictable, and it put him in a second and 11, a third and 11. I mean, there was a lot of run on first down for a loss of a yard, incomplete pass on second down, and then you're in a third and 11. There was a lot of that today, or something very, very similar to that sequence of events. Samaje Perine, 3 for 7, and then you had 3 yards rushing. The big deal here, obviously, Boyd had the 72-yarder for a touchdown. T. Higgins, 5 for 56 on 7 targets. He left the game late, too, with a minor injury, too, so we got to keep an eye on that. Not good news there. Where my cursor is here, A.J. Green, 0 receptions on 1 target. That is his 4th catchless game of the season. So whether it was with Joe Burrow or not, A.J. Green is not putting up the numbers that a franchise tagged player should. And I think there are a myriad of reasons for that. Some on A.J. Green, some totally outside of his control. But 4th catchless game by A.J. Green this year, and 2nd in a row. And only 1 target. Gio Bernard, non-factor in the passing game. Von Bell did have a fumble recovery that was stripped by Jesse Bates late in the game. Kind of made the game a little bit interesting towards the end there, but still was out of control. And those two guys and these two guys right here, William Jackson and Logan Wilson, those are some of the lone bright spots on defense. William Jackson had 3 passes defended. He did have a penalty against him early in the game. He had some epic battles with Devontae Parker, but at least 2 of those passes defended were in the end zone on little fade routes. So William Jackson ended up having a pretty nice day today overall. And then, Devontae Parker gets ousted from the game after that scrum later on. Logan Wilson playing okay. Jesse Bates, look at his 13 tackles and the forced fumble. Sam Hubbard, 10 tackles. But look, guys, nobody's getting to the quarterback. Nobody. Goose eggs all the way down. And it was a kind of a surreal moment for those of you listening or watching the game. Christian Covington left the game early at one point with an injury, and it was Geno Atkins coming in relief as a backup to Christian Covington. Kind of a surreal moment, and Geno Atkins not doing much to help the cause either, whether it's the injury that's still plaguing him or, just not getting enough snaps. Father Time catching up with him, all of the above, I don't know. But that's a real steep fall from grace by Geno Atkins, and a guy that I think we all were counting on to have a nice year for the Bengals. Tua's numbers, 26 of 39. Kind of a little surprising they had him throw the ball that much. But 296 yards, 1 touchdown, just very methodical. There were a couple throws that were really nice. 1 catch by Mike Gesicki, who, by the way, the Bengals they need to find guys on defense that can guard tight ends. For years, the Bengals have been unable to regularly limit the damage from athletic tight ends. They need to draft players or develop players that are who are able to do that, because tight ends kill this team. But Mike Gesicki made a really nice catch, but for the most part, Tua, I mean, there weren't like great outstanding throws, but there were a couple of good ones. And when you see this stat line for a rookie quarterback and his first handful of starts here, that's a pretty good stat line by Tua. Myles Gaskin had a really good game despite the fumble. He had 90 yards on the ground and a couple of catches for 51 yards. That long one he did end up fumbling on there, but overall a decent day by Myles Gaskin. Not too much else from others on the ground. And then you see here the big game from Gesicki, 9 catches, 88 yards, a touchdown. Athletic running backs are also a problem. 2 catches, 51 yards. Lynn Bowden, kind of a wide receiver running back hybrid, a guy who bounced around already as a rookie, 4 catches, 41 yards. And then, they tried to target Adam Shaheen, a tight end as well. So, just a complete disparity of yards. If you look at the passing yard, the net passing yards here, without any sacks, it's 296 passing yards to 156 to the Bengals. So 140 yards more passing. Rushing, the Bengals had 17 carries for 40 yards. Miami had 28 carries for 110. So there's 70 more yards on the ground. I mean, it's pretty staggering, the disparity of stats there. Pretty staggering, the disparity of stats. And last week I sat here and I kind of said, you got to like a little bit how this team responded in the wake of the Joe Burrow injury, and they kept it real close against the Giants. The Giants aren't a very good team, but they came out. Even Chris Spielman, who was on that telecast against the Giants, said, this team doesn't appear to be quitting, and you got to like that they're still out there fighting. Today, there was a little bit of that, but when things started to kind of stop going their way, they crawled into a shell, which is kind of a Bengals tradition, unfortunately. But they crawled into a shell, and they just let it snowball on them. And then you saw some reckless plays like the one from Mike Thomas. You saw guys that were engaging in the scrum with the Miami Dolphins. And I don't know what it was today with the Miami Dolphins. They were playing a brand of football that there was a lot of extracurricular shoving and pushing and punching and nudging and extra hits, all kinds of different stuff. And I don't know if that was a ploy to try and get the Bengals to make stupid mistakes and get caught for the retaliations or what, or if they were just playing pissed off and wanted to take it out on a lesser opponent. If the Bengals were saying things pregame, I guess Quentin Spain after the game was someone put it on Twitter. I'll have to find out who that was again, but I saw that Quentin Spain was kind of mouthing to some Dolphins players after the game. And I like Quentin Spain, but dude, you lost, and it was a pretty ugly loss. I don't know what you're mouthing about, but that's kind of is what it is. And at this point, like I said, I think all the Bengals really can hope for at this point is to have Brandon Allen show that he is the backup quarterback of the future and a guy that they can rely upon in an emergency situation. And you got to see some growth, and you hope to see some wins. I know that's not a popular opinion for everybody who's saying they want Penei Sewell, who is a great football player and a guy I really like, and I would love to see him with the Cincinnati Bengals. But how many years are we going to say, hey, tank for this guy? At some point, you got to start winning games. And even to build momentum into the next season. That's why Mike Brown has hung on to some of these coaches in the past after they've had a slow start but a strong finish to certain seasons, like Coslet and LeBeau. I mean, there were some guys in the past that had some strong finishes to seasons, and he said, well, it's the right mindset. It kind of says that the team didn't quit on him, and they played hard even though they're out of the playoff picture, and they won some games, and you can ride some momentum into the next season. I know we all want the high draft pick, but I think we need to start building. I think the Cincinnati Bengals need to start building some positive momentum. Just as many wins this year, despite different quarterbacks playing, despite the big free agency period, despite all of that, we're basically same exact results, just with an extra tie at this point. So that's up for debate, I suppose. I'm looking at some of these comments here. Tyrus Humphrey says, 0 discipline, 0 leadership, 0 direction. This one, Will Smith's banging on the Wade Phillips drum here, as a lot of us are. Bates and Lawson for next season. Finley was a failure there. Brian Kramer says nothing to build with these coaches. Then okay, then if you could very well be right. This could very well be not the coaching staff to lead Joe Burrow and this team into a championship window that they had hoped. But if that's the case, you need to cut that cord quickly. You need to cut that cord quickly, because the longer that this goes on and the longer that you try and make it work, even though everybody they may think that it's not going to work, the longer you let this go, the more difficult another rebuild or another reset is going to be, and it's going to take longer. So there's the personal side, Zach, family guy, seems like a really nice guy, all of that. Probably some of these other coaches, really great guys, but you have to be able to separate the business side from the personal side. If you're the Brown family, you need to be able to look at kind of the data here and the wins and losses and all of that. And you need to gauge the validity of a lot of these stories, of the Elise Jesse story about Zach Taylor lost the locker room. And if it's just older Marvin guys that are displeased with their role, that just comes with coaching turnover, or if the approach by Lou Anarumo, Zach Taylor, et cetera, is not the right one in terms of how they handle their players. Carlos Dunlap left, and he's doing pretty well in Seattle right now. That was kind of a two-way street. I think a lot of people agree with that, but he's got some production left in him. So if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, you need to decide if this is the direction you want to continue to keep going in terms of Zach Taylor, this coaching staff, some of his coaching staff, what have you. You need to make a decision, but you need to make it quick, because you have to make a commitment either way. Because if you're going to commit to Zach Taylor, you then need to reassess some members of the coaching staff, make some offseason decisions there, and then continue down this blueprint that Zach Taylor has supposedly sold to the front office, and continue to hoard those players, mold those players, and try and turn this thing around. Otherwise, you need to say it's absolutely not working. We need to get another set of coaches in here to kickstart a rebuild quickly, because this current rebuild is not working. This current rebuild is not working, as evidenced by 4.5 wins, almost 2 seasons, if you want to call it a 0.5 win, a tie. Yeah, Robert Rourke, it's called No Experience as Coaches. If you listen to the pregame show, myself, Matt Minnick, and John Sheeran, we were talking about this. I brought up a little bit. I think the issue is I don't know that Zach Taylor is an overall poor coach. The jury may still be out on that. And let me finish my statement before you jump the shark on me here. I think that Zach Taylor in this situation has bit off more than he can chew as an inexperienced NFL head coach. And I think that what I mean by that is he brought in coaches that also didn't have any experience. He didn't really follow the McVay blueprint in getting an experienced defensive coordinator, a guy who's maybe been an NFL head coach. He didn't do that. And then, you went to Jim Turner for the offensive line. You went to a really green offensive coordinator, and then you decide to also call the plays. So you're putting a lot on your plate as a brand new, young, first-time NFL head coach. And I think he's a confident guy that thought he can handle this, but the wins and losses say otherwise. That's not to say definitively that if he was to give that to somebody else, if he was to hire some assistants that have NFL head coaching experience that he could lean on a little bit, that doesn't mean that he can't be successful. But the way this is currently designed, it is not successful. Despite the injuries, despite the COVID, despite the weird off seasons, all of that, the way this is currently designed, it is not successful. And that's the bottom line. The Bengals now are, They're 2-9-1, 1-14-1 in one score games under Zach Taylor. What is he at now? 4-23-1. I mean, it's so hard to keep count. 4-23-1, I think, is where he's at as a head coach. A lot of people are saying if Zimmer gets fired, a no-brainer. Well, we'll see what happens there. I don't. Maybe. I don't know. Minnesota seems to like him, but we'll see. Yeah, for Rayshon Richardson, 4 wins in 2 years is not good at all. No, it's not. Zach is loyal to his coach, as Keith Brewer said. You can tell by how he talks. This is a good one from Chrissy here. Not one damn road game win in 2 seasons. Awful. That's a stat that not a lot of people are talking about. We're talking about the win-losses, the close games, and all that kind of stuff. The road win thing, that's a biggie. You got to be able to win on the road, and especially in this division, you got to sneak out some wins there every year if you want to be competitive. That's a really good reminder there from Chrissy. A sobering one, but a really good one. We're going long, guys. I'm going to get out of here, but I'm Anthony Cosenza with CincyJungle.com. We got to commiserate a little bit. We got to go over some stats. You got to hear a little bit from Zach Taylor in his press conference and get a little opinion and insight on this post-game show, the Week 13 post-game show. The Bengals lose to the Dolphins 19-7. The Miami Dolphins cover the spread. Shocking. Vegas knew what it was doing, but a really ugly game in a lot of senses, both performance-wise by the Cincinnati Bengals and the fighting between the two teams. Coaches the officiating, everything just kind of seemed to be out of control. So that's about all you can really say about this one. I mean, and the questions about the coaching staff still remain. But hey, I'm going to get on out of here. I'm sure you all have more to do, better things to do. Well, maybe not better things. I don't know. You got things to do for this weekend. And I appreciate you spending a little time with me, for those tuning in live or for those of you listening after the fact. I appreciate you tuning in live and going through the aftermath of this game. We've got a big week ahead for you, by the way, on the podcast. Okay, we've got a Sam Hubbard interview coming early in the week, so we'll be talking with him. Excited to do that. We've got our Wednesday deep dive show. We've got our listener questions live episode on Friday. So if you want to start submitting those questions to us, go ahead and start doing that to queue up that. On Friday, we've got our pregame show by Narragansett Beer. On Sunday, before the game, an hour before kickoff, we've got our postgame show after that, where we get to virtual hug and get through this, what the season has brought us. So anyway, thanks everybody. Check out all that material this week, as well as some stuff from Matt Minnick in his Chalk Talk episodes, and the boys Ace and Zim from Orange is the New Black, the podcast, all on the Cincy Jungle podcast channel.